In early February, as news of the mutiny spread, protests and insurrectionary movements developed across the country. Crucially, many elements within the military and the police services joined the disturbances. This augured ill for Selassie, whose grip on power, like any authoritarian ruler, could only be maintained so long as the military and security forces remained loyal. By early March, Selassie was under sufficient pressure that he made a number of announcements that political concessions would be made to make ministers and senior government officials more accountable to the parliament. Moreover, the 1955 constitution would be re-evaluated to see how Ethiopia's politics could be made more inclusive of different groups within the empire. Yet these compromises failed to stem the tide of unrest. Instead, labor unions called for general strike action across the country in March 1974, and early in April, the significant Muslim minority in the country began agitating for greater religious freedoms. By that time, elements of the military were evidently in charge of much of the running of the government, and Selassie was losing control of the situation. However, it was not until June that the infamous Derg was set up. This was officially known as the Provisional Military Administrative Council and consisted of relatively low-ranking army officers and officials who effectively seized power in the summer of 1974. That summer, they began a campaign of arrests of prominent political figures and issued a manifesto of proposed reforms. Finally, on the 12th of September 1974, 44 years after he first became emperor and nearly 6 decades since his accession to a position of preeminence in Ethiopian politics, the Derg deposed Emperor Haile Selassie. Following his deposition, Selassie was placed under house arrest. His son, Crown Prince Asfaw, who had been proclaimed as emperor by the leaders of the failed coup of 1960, was now again proclaimed by the Derg. He was not in Ethiopia at the time, and decreed that his father's deposition and the actions of the Provisional Military Administrative Council in proclaiming him as emperor were illegitimate. Accordingly, in March 1975, the Derg abolished the Ethiopian monarchy altogether, bringing the empire to an end and ushering in the creation of a new Ethiopian state. Meanwhile, the new military junta had spent much of the winter of 1974 and the spring of 1975 overseeing the execution of hundreds of those who were associated with the old imperial regime. This included some collateral members of the imperial family, notably Iskender Desta, a grandson of Selassie's, who had also been a prominent figure within the Ethiopian navy. The signs for the former emperor were ominous, and several months later, on the 28th of August 1975, state media announced that Selassie had died the previous day, the 27th of August. The official cause of death at 83 years of age was given as respiratory failure, but Selassie had almost certainly been strangled to death by Derg soldiers.